Hi all, Suzette West here. I am jumping on to share some quick basic information about the human brain. In the past, I have referenced portions of the brain responsible for reacting versus responding. Specifically, I'm referring to the amygdala versus the prefrontal cortex. In the past, I have spoken about how these two parts of the brain play a role in how we react or respond to the world around us. Still, this morning, I felt the need to be a little more precise about explaining the actual location of the amygdala and prefrontal cortex, as well as share resources where you can begin to research for yourself and learn more about how these two parts of the brain work together and sometimes they don't work together. So, my objective is to introduce basic information that I've researched regarding the relationship between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, as well as explain what happens during an amygdala hijack. And I'd like to start by giving a brief overview of both brain structures and their roles, and then move on to describe the interaction between them during stress or emotional overload. Um, I also want to share my resources and encourage deeper study of this information to broaden awareness. This is definitely essential information. So, to start with the basics, um, we all know the brain is a very significant part of our human anatomy. It is the body's control center, responsible for everything from our thoughts and feelings to our movements and bodily functions. And within this amazing part of our human anatomy, there is a part of the brain called the amygdala, which is a small almond-shaped structure deep within the brain's medial temporal lobe. It's part of the limbic system, often referred to as the brain's emotional center. The amygdala plays a crucial role in processing emotions, especially fear and forms of emotional memories. So now I'd like to, let me see, and I did have a picture. There we go. So here's a picture that I sourced from the Johns Hopkins Medicine website. And I put the source of the website right there on the screen. So you can go check out their website for more information about this. So I want to introduce now the prefrontal cortex. And as you saw in the previous slide, it is in the region of the frontal lobe area of the brain. All right. And there's where it's at. So, and I made some more information. So, the prefrontal cortex, in contrast with the amygdala, it's just behind the forehead, and this area is associated with higher cognitive functions, such as decision making, problem solving, control of impulsive behaviors, and social interaction. It's considered the rational part of the brain, helping to modulate emotions and actions in a reasoned manner. Now, previously, when I spoke about the amygdala, I always reference to the back part of my brain, but actually, the amygdala is more in the middle, just like we're showing right here. So that's why I kind of felt like I needed to create this really brief, basic presentation just because I want to be precise about the information that I present. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala are interconnected. The prefrontal cortex acts as a regulator to moderate the emotional responses generated by the amygdala. So under normal circumstances, the prefrontal cortex assesses situations and dampens the amygdala's response to threats, facilitating a more measured and appropriate reaction to stimuli. Okay, now what do I have here? I think I have something about that. Okay, so here's some information about the amygdala. This is from the Cambridge Dictionary website. So can go check that out. They've got a lot of interesting information too on that website. Here's what happens during an amygdala hijack. This term was first coined by psychologist Daniel Goleman in his work on emotional intelligence. It is a situation where the amygdala takes over or hijacks the rational brain, aka the prefrontal cortex, leading to an immediate and overwhelming emotional response disproportionate to the actual stimulus or situation. So during an amygdala hijack, the amygdala perceives a threat, real or imagined, and triggers a fight, flight, or freeze response before the prefrontal cortex can intervene and assess the situation. This can result in impulsive, irrational, or potentially damaging behaviors. So when I talk about the need for heart coherent leadership, in that this means that a heart coherent leader knows the tools, has practices to be able to, whenever the amygdala hijacks, the tools are there and they're well practiced with those tools to then turn down the volume of stress so that the prefrontal cortex can do its job and regulate the emotional trigger to make sure, are we really in danger, or is there a measured way to go about this? Like, what is the best way forward? It's always best to respond rather than reacting. So where something causes anxiety with the amygdala hijack, the prefrontal cortex, with the use of the tools to manage the hijack, can turn down the volume so that the hijack becomes managed concern. And that's huge, especially when you're making executive level decisions. Okay, and here's another source from the Healthline website referencing how this term amygdala hijack was first coined by Daniel Goleman. I just wanted to jump on here and make that real basic presentation about amygdala hijack, and most importantly, where the amygdala is versus where the prefrontal cortex is, and what happens during an amygdala hijack, and why it's important to have the tools to turn down the volume of stress so that we can thoughtfully respond as opposed to reacting to life. Now we're responding to life. And so this is why I am so passionate about heart coherent leadership, because it means there is a sense of mastery over the tools to allow managed concern to replace an amygdala hijack where we're making rash decisions and we are reacting to things instead of responding thoughtfully. So anyway, again, Suzette West, hope this was helpful. And yeah, till next time, have